I turn to Catherine During-Davidson. Catherine works as coordinator of data management support at Aarhus University Library. She was the project manager on the project Open Science Skills in Danish Research Libraries, funded by Denmark's Electronic Research Library. And she will describe the outcomes of this project, as well as some of the challenges the project encountered in setting up the Open Science Skilling Initiative. Thank you, Catherine. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I just need to be able to share my screen, I think. Yes, thank you.
Yes, I think Maria should stop sharing to allow. Okay.
It's okay. So, yes, thank you for having me, and thank you all for joining. As Frances just said, I was the project lead on this project on open science skills, and the project was had the aim to investigate and module and deploy open science skills for Danish research librarians. So today I will be outlining the conceptual model of the project, but also a 7-step module we used that includes the qualification frameworks to rationalize how we get from services to skills. But just a few facts. The project ran from 2018 and until the May 2020. We were 6 institutions and altogether 20 project members. We wanted to make this conceptual model, and we talked a lot about if it should be open research or open science, because we wanted to include all the humanities and arts. But I guess today there is a consensus on calling these this open science. So let's stick to that. The module that we laid out was with 4 layers, and in the center of the research lifecycle, we put the researcher, because we wanted all the service that we do that we develop to be based on the researcher's needs and not to be based on what we think is the researcher's needs. The next layer is the infrastructure, and then the library services, and then we have the outer layer, which is policies and principles. Now, well, first of all, we know that the project model that we did has its limitations. It's a static representation, of course, of the research process, and in reality, research processes are interactive and dynamic processes. So that's just to mention this. Secondly, the module did not explain how to translate the identified open science services into relevant competencies and skills for the librarians. So we had to address that later on, and we did that with the 7-step module I will come back to in a minute. Just to zoom in, the module is taking the research through 3 different phases: the planning phase, the active phase, and publishing phase. Again, it's just a static illustration. But the open science landscape has changed quite a lot since we started out, but it's still valid to say that the digital infrastructure determines a lot of the research work and support services today also. Some of the services in the library are extremely developed, and this could be information retrieval, archiving, and open access. We pretty into that already, but other services are under development, and this could be data documentation and data publishing. But based on the conceptual model, the project came with the three main outcomes. And one of those was the competency model, which is here illustrated by the dots in pink or brown. You can see the three different phases in three different level of support. We also came up with an inspirational training catalog, this actually contains just a lot of links to webinars and online learning, e-learning. And of course, it was outdated almost immediately because it was a picture of what was out there at the moment, but we found it useful for the project to do. What we did also was we made development program with 2 courses. It should have been 3, but because of the coronavirus, we ended up by doing 2, where the first was a workshop on open digital collections and the tools needed to access those collections. And the second workshop was on research data management. Yeah. The competency model that I mentioned first here is actually a matrix with the 11 areas of competencies and a qualification framework on 3 levels. So that's what is illustrated by the dots up there in the corner. Yeah. Now, what I really wanted to share with you today is this 7-step module. Within the project, we did a literature review where we attempted to investigate and explain how to get from services to competencies. And we gathered theory and empirical knowledge to identify services, competencies, and skills. And we did that because we found that one of the challenges is to align services with the local requirements and research culture, combined with the extent on how quickly the library can react to the dynamics of the university that it serves. So some needs for support services develop quite quickly, and others, such as policy development and implementation, develop at a much slower rate. So the library finds themselves at the tipping point, you might say, between supporting existing research cultures and predicting whether methods and tools, which methods and tools they need to invest in the coming years. So central for our review was how to strategically develop skills and competencies that will support a rational portfolio of services in the future. Yeah. I'll just zoom in a bit on this because first of all, of course, we need to define the context, and it could be just the university's overall research strategy. It could also be a specific task. And then after that, the step 2 would be to identify who needs this service and why. And one example could be how can the library support publication of data from Horizon 2020 research and innovation actions. And then the example of the user in that specific example could be the research groups that is under the requirement of the Horizon 2020 pilot on open research data. I know this is an old example. I'm pulling out the hat, but I think it will do nice to explain the module. So Now, the next step would be to rationalize the service based on the knowledge of the potential users of the service and their needs, to define which activities the service should support. So in our case, it could be the participants in the Horizon 2020 funding application. They need help to understand and fulfilling the requirements to demonstrate and publish data openly. And the university then needs to be able to recommend the repositories or in which researchers can publish their data due to this. So what skills would that require? Well, it could require, in this case, knowledge about persistent identifiers, metadata licenses, openness and fair principles, but also soft skills as how to teach this and how to communicate. So, the qualification framework links skills requirements defined in step 4 to verify the qualification. The qualification framework defines what is considered knowledge, competence, and skills, and on what level. And on the right side, you can see the example in each of these different levels. It enables us to formulate knowledge, learning outcomes, and expectations to skills and competencies using standard terminology that is transferable and understandable across organizations, and I guess even across countries. And furthermore, the qualification frameworks also illustrates the progression between competence levels. So what is expected at the basic level and what will be expected on an expert level. The final steps is the form to what form is appropriate for the service. This could be online tutorials, or this could be seminars, courses that you will have to decide on. And the last is to describe the profit for the organization. What would they gain to provide this service or training? And in our example, it could be that research support becomes knowledgeable, and for the researchers in the Horizon 2020 projects, it could be that university data sets become more visible in the repositories, and as a result, might even be used even more. And that the university strategy to work openly and fair is supported. It could be the outcome if we take the example just mentioned. The risk of not providing the service is also one that you could state in this step 7. And in our example, it could be that the researchers in the Horizon 2020 projects are not adhere to the rules on publishing data openly. They might not fully understand the requirements on open and fair data, and they might discover their responsibility a bit late. And the result could be that a lot of extra work maybe, or maybe it could be that the research project is ultimately compromised. So that was just the 7-step module with an example. I hope that you find it interesting because I think it's a nice it was a nice tool, and we used it in the competency model that we did. This is one of the main outcomes I was just mentioned earlier. The matrix with the 11 areas of competence and the 3 levels of competence. I know you cannot read this on the right hand side, and if you could, it would be in Danish, so you probably wouldn't understand anyway. But just to say that I think that we have provided a nice framework for further training and skilling activities and of course it's now up to the management in the Danish research libraries to actually bring this into the library and use it. I hear that it's already happening in several Danish libraries, so that's very good. If you want to know more, all of this is in Zenodo. Some of the files are in Danish, but there will be an English abstract, and you are always welcome to contact me if you want to have a talk about this and learn more. So yeah, thank you for listening. That was all for me.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I think this is very useful to as a model to develop